Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the water. I'm just paddling in the beautiful little river here, enjoying the day. It is gorgeous. It's warm out. It's probably mid-20s, high humidity today, so the bugs are pretty bad. I kind of underestimated how bad the bugs are going to be today. So when I was putting in the boat, I was literally running to get into the water. Just a gorgeous day. As you saw earlier, the bullfrogs are out. Really big bullfrogs, and I'm going to try a little bit of fishing today in here, see if we can grab anything. It's pretty weedy in here, fairly shallow, so I'm not going to go for any, I don't know, maybe pike will be in here, a few panfish. We'll see what we can get. Perch probably. Yeah, thank goodness I had my water shoes from Cabela's. These are Keens. It was super mucky trying to get into the boat today. The Keen water shoes are super comfortable. I mean, you can use them on land too. I hike with them too, but it's really nice not to be able to lose like a flip-flop in the muck, or and you can rinse them off really easily. So yeah, really happy to have those today. Yeah, really mucky. The water is down a little bit, and you know, the bugs are bad. What a nice day. I saw a bluebird on the way in too, which is really cool. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. There's a little tiny bluebird birdhouse actually by where I parked the car, so the little bird is probably going into its little nest box, so that was really neat. Gotta love being out in nature, especially this time of year, summer. It's bass season. I don't know if you guys are into fishing, but I love bass fishing. On my way to get my fishing gear today, I went on a little bit of a tour down memory lane, and I'll take you guys down that little tour as well. I was looking for my fishing pole and I could not find it. So I ended up finding my old tackle box from when I was a child. I mean, we're talking anywhere between, I don't know, probably 7 and 9 years old, so I still have it. Not the original contents, mind you, but I still have it. And I ended up finding some really, really old antique fishing lures that were gifted to me, so we'll go through those as well. I was going to, last moment, I really couldn't find my fishing rod. I was going to do it Andrew Stanley style with, I had this old rod where the tip is missing. So narrowly escaped bringing out my old rod, but I found my rod. I had put it up with my paddle here, so I looked up and grabbed the paddle, and sure enough I put my rod and my other little tackle box up there too. So save the day to look around and go down memory lane. So let me show you my tackle box from when I was a kid. This is really cool. Ah, here we go. This brings back memories. Old pal Woodstream, made in Canada. This is a little Canadian Tire special back in the day, and it's actually, like, this is an antique. This is from the 80s, and yeah, solid. Everything's still intact. Like, I guess there's like a little bit of, you know, metal in there, mostly plastic obviously, but wow, like, this is a relic. So I've dusted it off. It was just on the top shelf in the garage. Now this is not the original contents, obviously. This is newer tackle. I think when I was a kid, I pretty much fished with worms or minnows. I was never particularly good at fishing with lures back in the day. And I do remember though having these little fake plastic worms, like a little bag of these little like pinky brown worms, kind of the original worms that had come out with the scent in them. So I didn't have a lot of success with those. Mom and I would go every night. We wanted to go fishing, and we would do worming. So we would put on the sprinkler system, and we would go out and we would get just like containers of these big night crawlers. So that's what I would use for fishing mainly when I was a kid, you know, with a bobber and a hook. So basically I had bobber, hook, these fake plastic worms. Wasn't until I was probably my teens that I ended up really getting into fishing with lures and, you know, going more after bass, you know, with these kind of lures right here. This box is really cool. You know, it's dual compartment, so there was, you know, stuff down here as well. When I was going through this part, I found lead weights, of course, which I don't use anymore. This stuff is new, but look at this. This is an old bait casting reel made in Japan. I think this was my mom's, to be honest with you, or one of her bait casting reels. So this is an oldie, really old one. I can't be for certain if it was hers, but like obviously I have it, so it's somebody's. So this is an old one. It's in really good shape, actually. It still works. So I don't know, I've been collecting old fishing gear probably since I was in my teens. You know, it's just really cool to have that stuff. I have a really old fly fishing rod as well. I remember once when I was a kid, we were having a yard sale and we had it in the backyard, and the garage was open and there's some stuff in the garage too. And somebody came by and was like, oh my God, and, you know, saw the old fly reel and rod and was like, is that for sale? Like, that's actually a pretty significant piece of history you have there. So no, it was not for sale. I still have it. It's in actually like mint condition. So that's really cool. So I had a lot of mentors when I was fishing, obviously. You know, my mom would take me out, my dad would take me out very early in the morning. My dad would take me at like 6 in the morning. We were getting up, going fishing up north when we were on holidays and stuff like that. And, you know, our goal was always to catch a fish for each of us for supper. It was the perch back then were pretty big where we fished, so we get 2 perch and 1 bass. I'd always eat the bass. I wasn't a huge fan of perch. I like perch now, but so we all fishing was so good. I feel like back in the day, it feels like there was a lot more to be had, and they were less tackle shy. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I met somebody when I was in, I don't know, somewhere between 14 and 16 years old. His name was Frank. He was an elderly man who was a commercial fisherman back in the day. And he really enjoyed sport fishing as well, and so he taught me a lot, actually. He would take me out in his aluminum boat, you know, little, I don't know what it was, 20 horsepower motor or something like that. I don't know what we were banging around in. And we would go out and do some really good fishing. I caught like a trophy bass with him once, which was amazing. We found this little hole in the middle of the lake, and that night was magic. It was like, I think I caught like, I don't know, like 50 perch and you know, tons of bass. I remember when I caught my trophy bass, I think he was like 5.5 pounds, something like that, smallmouth. The little hole that we were fishing in got really quiet, and Frank says to me, you know, there's a big fish down in there. And I was all excited, you know, because you could literally see, you know, the fish kind of scattering around. Like, the water was pretty clear back then, not like now when things get a little bit over, you know, too many nutrients in lakes and stuff, you can't see down anymore. But yeah, so I could see all the fish scattering, and even on like the fish finder too, so getting really pumped up. And then, oh man, it was the fight of my life, you know, when you're like, I don't know, 15, 16, pulling in this big fish. And bass like to fight, as you guys know if you're bass fishermen. They're lots of fun. So that really got me hooked on fishing, all those experiences that I had. And I remember catching my first pike too, running in to wake up my mom, but I caught this pike. It wasn't that big. I think it was like 1/2 pound, but you know, they feel like you hit a log when you're little and you're just like, yeah, yanking to bring them in. And I remember showing her the pike, and that was really exciting. So yeah, I've been collecting old fishing lures and things like that, and Frank was a huge collector of those lures, and he used to go to flea markets and stuff like that and pick them up, you know, the old wooden ones and things like that. And I remember one time he told me a story. He had a really valuable lure. He had all these books, and he would just, you know, read them cover to cover as to what lure was what, and he was always on the lookout for these really valuable lures. And I guess at one flea market, I think it was in the States, they used to spend time in Florida, he walked in there and saw this lure, and there's like, I don't know, it was a kind of a wooden frog or there's something, and it was apparently one of 2 or 3 in the world, and he recognized it right away. So his heart skipped a beat. So I guess he and his wife went back to the car. He always carried his little books with him because he couldn't go on the internet back then. He didn't know how to go on the internet. Didn't have really much internet back at that time. So went back to the car, had his book with him, starts flipping through the book, basically looks at what he suspects is what he's seeing. Sure enough, it's this really valuable lure. I think at the time it was valued at $15,000. There was only 2 or 3 of them in the world. So he goes back to the vendor, doesn't tell the vendor, of course, what the guy has. I mean, the person has no idea. I think it's sold for like $2 or $5 or something, right? Like typical old wooden lures. They don't go for too much unless you have one in really good condition or it's rare. So anyway, he gives the guy a $5 or whatever and goes back and drives it straight to the bank. Like, not even joking. It was in mint condition. Probably in its original box, I would guess it was worth that much. So I never did see it. He told me all about it. It's sitting in the bank somewhere. And I think when Frank passed, I think he gave it to his son. Frank was getting rid of a few of his duplicates and collectible items that he had, and he gave them to me back when, so that was awesome. He gave me some of his fly fishing stuff, and so I would tie flies and stuff and practice that in my teens. That was a fun little hobby. Wasn't much into fly fishing, never really did a lot of it, so I admire a lot of you guys that go out there. You know, NL Ghost Wolf and Wallace and Vivian and you know, Dave Wilcox going out there and doing your fly fishing, getting your salmon and your trout and stuff like that. It's really cool to watch you guys do that. But I really wasn't much into it, but it was a fun hobby to have. I do have, though, some really neat lures that were used, you know, for lake trout and, you know, way back in the day. So let me just show you some of the stuff Frank gave me over the years. Righty, so I've kept them in this Woodstream little tackle box here forever. So they've been in good shape. My dad stored them for me for a while, and then when I my own place, he sent them to me, which is great. So yeah, look at these little puppies here. They're not in bad shape. They're a bit rusty, but look at these. Like, isn't this really cool? Like, these are all wood. The paint job is still intact, which is amazing. So lots of different ones. I got duplicates of some of them. Of course, he had duplicates too. I wouldn't give me the best ones, but and then, you know, he would put some of the prices on them that they were worth from his little books. This one, the paint job's not that great. Oh yeah, here's one right here. See, I even have his original notes. It had really shaky handwriting, so very good. $3.60. Now that was way back when, so it might be worth a little bit more than that now, depending on what people think of its condition. So yeah, oh boy, there's like a bunch in here. Now this one is really interesting. There's a little story behind this one. Let me see if I can get it out here. All right, fix that. So take a look at this one right here. So this one's pretty special. This is an approximately, I'd say about 70-year-old wooden jointed lure. This is an AWS, as you can see there, AWS jointed pikey, I believe, and it's got sort of little gems there for the eyes. And AWS stands for the A.W. Sarima Tackle Company, and it was one of Ontario's vintage tackle makers. And they were situated out of, they started off in Lansing, Ontario, and they sort of finished up business in Willowdale and around the Toronto area. So the this company was famous for having two patents. One was for the fish hawk and the musky head lure, and they had a unique diving metal lip to them. So yeah, this is a really, really cool lure and quite old, so I want to keep it nice and safe. And so this is a special note that explains a lure that I don't have here in town, but I just wanted to share it with you because it is really interesting. It is a 90-year-old lure that I have, and it's a gem. As you can see, the note is written in my friend Frank's handwriting, so let's take a look at it. All right, so it says, here's another lure for your collection. It was used by John Graham and his wife of Cagawan, and that's like a little town up in Manitoulin Island, Northern Ontario, if you guys are from there. Big shout out. So this lure apparently was used during the 1930s in the Cagawan Bay for lake trout. They fished for fish to sell and try to make a living during the Depression. So isn't that really cool? It is an A.L.N.W. Limited from Toronto. It's overall bait size 10 and sold during the 30s for $1.60, which I guess was probably pretty expensive for a lure, I would imagine. Continues on and says, if you think you would like to collect antique tackle, I think it would be a really good hobby for you, and it is life putting money in the bank. His handwriting is a little bit hard to read here, but something about it's a treasure for now, but it'll be worth a fortune in the future. Never forget the fun. Yeah, never forget the fun. Something about having fun with this hobby. And basically he tells me how to kind of set things up here and like how I would sort of label this lure for the collection. Yeah, so he said he paid in 1996, so when I was 16, he paid $10 for that. So yeah, he just sort of writes down like the extreme detail like to describe this lure. Yeah, so isn't that neat? The lure that I have, it was used to support a family in the north during the Depression. It's such a special lure. Wow, I'm really, really fortunate to have that. So let's take a look at some of the other lures that I have in my kit. Yeah, so there's these guys right here. They were pretty cool. They're not in as good shape. And if I flip over this tackle box, there's this guy right here. This one has quite a lot of damage. I don't know if some plastic melted on it or what happened there. And more of these little guys right here. So lots of different colors on them, so that's kind of cool. There's a sputterbug. Plastic on it obviously is gone. I'm sure they can be restored. And yeah, just a few more little things here and there. I'm amazed the plastic on this guy is held in there. I don't know, this one's probably not that old, but that's great. I'm gonna grab something along these weed beds. You know, lots of good memories there. You know, the old times, they were the good times. Lots of, you know, interesting people I met over the years and really fond memories, you know, fishing. And, you know, those lures, they were made to last. I mean, how cool is that? You know, I feel like now if I use my lures, they don't last super long. Fish kind of chew them up and whatnot. It's pretty amazing. You know, just made out of wood. I know a lot of people make them themselves out of wood, which is really cool. Still like keeping up the old times, and now everything's sort of plastic and metal and things like that. I just think it's really neat to sort of see how things were done in the past and to know the history behind some of these lures. It's really cool that Frank told me the history behind that one lure. I think that's amazing. I don't know how he got that info. Maybe that family had it at a, you know, an auction or yard sale or something and told him all about it. So now that information is passed on to me and I can kind of hang on to that lure for old times. I think maybe I should take better care of them, probably not keep them in a plastic tackle box, although they seem to be in reasonable shape. Maybe I should, you know, mount them on, you know, some kind of shadow box or something like that to kind of keep them. I don't know if me maybe adding more, like fixing the treble hooks and things like that would deteriorate their value. If you guys know anything about that, please let me know down below in the comments. I certainly don't want to ruin these things by taking off the original hardware off of them, really. So let me know if you guys collect things like this, if you you know anything about restoring them or storing them actually too, would be really helpful for me because I really need to protect what I have. Now this waterway, any fish that I catch today wouldn't be eating anyways. The waterway does have fairly marginal water quality. It's right along the shores of a lot of agricultural, you know, a lot of agricultural land and things like that. So there's runoff obviously from wildlife, livestock, and potentially, ow, deer fly, potentially to pesticides and things like that. So I definitely would not want to be eating fish out of here. So I would just put them back, just mainly for sport anyway. So one thing though I should mention, I'm in Ontario here. It's a province in Canada, for those of you who don't know, and we do have a guideline book that comes out in regard to fish that, you know, we can eat and the recommended amount to eat, and of course all it talks about the rules and regs too about you know, what size we can keep and all that kind of stuff. So here, because a lot of the land has been affected, you know, by agriculture, you know, pesticides and things like that, we have a certain amount of fish that we can eat in a certain weight category because the fish can bioaccumulate toxins like mercury and pesticides and things like that. So I don't have the book with me, but I did it in one of my previous fishing videos way back when. Just shows every year the guidelines come out. I don't know when the last testing on a lot of the fish is done. They will take fish and take samples from them and determine levels of pesticides and whatnot in them. Of course, the bigger predator fish are more contaminated than the smaller fish. Things just bioaccumulate up the food chain. So like myself as a female, you know, there's, especially if you're having kids or whatever, there's a certain amount you can eat per week, for example, or you're putting yourself and your child at risk. So it's kind of sad, you know. I mean, this is stuff from the past, obviously. I grew up on the Great Lakes. There's a lot of contamination in there and still is. So we have to be really, really careful what we eat. So I just haven't been eating like a ton of wild fish, to be honest. But you know, it's just kind of reducing my risk there. But I ate a fair bit of it as a kid, but again, following guidelines. You always had to look it up and make sure that, yeah, even as a kid, that you weren't going to make yourself in the long term sick by ingesting fish that had like pesticides, you know, and heavy metals, you know, in their tissue. So something to think about. I don't know if you guys have that where you're from, where there's a guideline published about that, but it's been something that I've had to deal with my whole life. It is so peaceful in here. It's nice listening to the bullfrogs and all the birds and the deer flies buzzing by my ear. There's one buzzing by the camera there. Hopefully you can't hear that. But you can join me in the peace and comfort of your own home without the bugs. Isn't that great? Well, take a look at these beautiful lily pads in here. Oh, this is definitely summer. They're just about ready to open. Well, thanks for taking a trip down memory lane with me, learning about sort of my past with fishing and the mentors that I had, and my little hobby of collecting lures. Let me know if this video has brought up some memories of your past from you know, fishing as a kid, you know, with your grandparents, or your parents, or your friends. Leave some stories down below in the comments. Leave some good fish stories for us. I'd love to hear them. Probably the craziest fishing story I had was catching a fish by its tail. I don't know how that actually happened, but I pulled it up and I was hooked into its tail. Anyway, it was fine. It was just into a little bit of it and let it go, but that was like the craziest story I've had. And of course, my trophy fish there. So yeah, I'd love to hear your stories. Brings back great memories of old times past, the good old days, fishing in the summertime. All right, well, we'll see you in the next video. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I'm gonna kind of keep on fishing here. It's getting shallow, so I gotta find a better spot. But we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one. Take care.